You know, when this first came out and people were like, oh yeah, we gotta wear, the ones who were really ballistic about wearing masks and plexiglass and all this were people who were like, I saw them eat bats. And I said, the Chinese culture is not to eat bats. Oh yes they are. Yes they are. So I find that the same people who love taking the shot at doing the mask and the social distancing and the plexiglass, they have a secret hatred for Asian people or the Chinese. Now, that's a fact. They are racist. Whatever. I don't even care about the word racist. You know why? Because I am all races. And I know exactly what it's like to have racism, but if people ghost me or something, there's no way I'm going to say, oh, it's my race. I have a feeling it's probably because of my character. And whether that character doesn't translate well into the country that I live or the people that I talk to, I have to accept it. I really don't care. Now, the word race means your characteristics. Like a bird, like if a bird, in the species of birds, you've got many races of birds. Some of them have long legs. Look at. And some of them are meat eaters, like this one. And some of them are seed eaters. Some of them have stripes. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of birds. But do you hear them complaining about being racist against? No, they just avoid each other. They stay together. That's nature. A forced kind of tolerance based on nothing or based on looks is actually anti-nature. When animals in nature of different races within a species, and look at you got different fruits. They're different races too. They have different characteristics. That's how you recognize them. But they coexist and they are interdependent. But they're not one thing. They're not forced to like each other. It's just they live in love, because love is existing around things that you are not. Like this blossom is not a bird. This blossom is not a wheat. This is not wheat. So it loves being around grass. It loves being around other races of its own species. It lives on that, and that's what love is. Love is the opposite of a monocrop, where you have one thing and it doesn't thrive because everything needs each other. Everything needs each other, and they just accept it. They don't talk about it. They don't squawk about it. They don't complain, and they don't play the victim. When you have some birds are really evil. They're wicked. Like they'll go in and pretend to be an egg of another bird. But you see, animals do not complain. They just accept that it's a tragedy, and they mourn. They mourn. They don't just get squawky and complain. They actually mourn, and they feel the sadness. But they somehow soldier on in life and remain beautiful. Sometimes they even get more beautiful. So you think about the word race. It's called characteristics. Like this monarch butterfly has got certain colors. There's millions of different colors of butterfly or patterns, and that would be their race. Because that's the original word for race, is the characteristics, like a stripe. Okay? It is not a bad word. What is bad is when you start jamming it and forcing it and making us not breathe into life itself and not live, because you keep on invading our minds. That is malfeasance. That is a lack of wisdom, a lack of understanding about nature itself. It's not how nature works. So I don't know where you're getting it from. So People, wake the fuck up and stop being messed around with. You're not, you can't allow this torture, because torture is basically just ongoing. They will never end it. They will never be satisfied, because race, let me say another thing, is that the people who say that they're not racist are always racist. I'll give you an example. My father was racist against my mother, but of course he'd never admit it. But you could just tell in certain things he'd say about other people, whatever. But because he was afraid, because he was mixed race as well, so he didn't want to get all that bad attention from the outside world or whatever. So, for instance, I asked back in the early 70s, I said, what about an aunt of mine who lived in Los Angeles? And he said, oh, she was racist. That little bitch, she was racist. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, she didn't let one of her sons, when he came in from somewhere, he wasn't allowed to play with a little black boy in school. And he turned out and it was Michael Jackson. And I said, well, you're kidding. And he said, yeah. And blah, blah. So the point is my father didn't give a shit about black kids. But when it turned out 50 years later that was Michael Jackson, then suddenly he's all social justice warrioring for racism. And I said, well, wait a minute, you're racist because you didn't want my mom to have friends of different races, because, we were living in a very tough town in Canada where there was only one race, and that was the fucking Freemasons. So, I mean, it's total hypocrisy. These people changed their colors. They changed the colors of their soul rather than the colors on the outside. They are all fucked up on the inside because they have no integrity, or they bend to money, or they bend to some other evil hatred, but they're never going to admit it, not in a million years. So even to talk about it is such a farce and such an egregious waste of your energy and time and mental capacity, and an abuse on your sovereign freedom as any kind of a being on this earth. Look at this bird. You think he talks about critical race theory? You think this bird goes around telling other birds to be nice and kind? What an embarrassment. What an embarrassment. How has humankind got so low? Lower than the worm. I'm afraid to say. That's a disgrace. Have an uphill climb, babies, and get better.